All right, the American dream has always been to, buy a home. Your number one investment is your home, and so Americans, especially middle class, is that we've saved every single penny that we could get, and we put it into this home, and we think that it's the best investment we could possibly make. Now, here's the facts, and some people are going to have a hard time with this. A home, there's been a lot of research out there on homes, and when we take into account inflation and other factors, homes generally only increase about 1% a year. So home values, especially in the Midwest, go up very, 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 very slowly. And so this thought of that this home is a major investment, really, at the end of the day, the benefit, it's better than renting in the long run because you get to depreciate the interest that you're paying on your loan, so that comes off of your taxable income, which you learned in the tax unit. So if I make, let's say, $60,000 a year and I'm spending $15,000 in interest on my loan for the year, instead of getting taxed on $60,000 of income, I'm only getting taxed on $45,000. So that $15,000 is not getting taxed. So really kind of think a little bit about how you view the home. And a lot of people will run out and they take every penny they have and they put it into this home. And what they're ignoring are their asset buckets that I talked about in the last lesson. And so that home's only going up 1%. You got to fix the furnace, you got to fix the air conditioner, you got to get a new roof, you got to do landscaping, you got to heat the home, you got to cool the home. You have all these extra bills on a monthly basis. So your burn rate is how much money you're spending every month. You're really spending a lot of money keeping that house up from a month-to-month basis, and then year to year things break, you got to fix it. For us, we just had to get a new furnace. We have to get a new stove here. So these are all things that, it's expensive running at home, and you just have to be prepared for that. I just had to get the vents cleaned in my dryer. That was another expense. So the expenses continue to come on an ongoing basis. So that 1% growth that you feel like, oh, I bought the house for 100, and 30 years later I sell it for 250, I made 150. Really, you spent a lot of money. However, it is better than renting in the long run, and because you're going to walk away with what is called equity. And that's kind of what I'm going to teach you right now is the concept of equity. You build equity three ways. One, in your down payment. Two, by making your monthly principal payments. Every time you make a payment, a portion is going towards principal, the other portion is going towards interest on the loan. And then the third way you build equity, you hope, is that the home goes up in value. All right, so let me just take a loan here. Let's say you're buying your dream home. Your dream home costs $400,000. And right now, today's lending standards, they want 20% down. So you're going to borrow $320,000. You're going to borrow it over 30 years at 4.5%. So I'm going to show you kind of how the payments work here. I'm going to hit calculate. We're going to let our computer think here. So that home, remember, we borrowed, what did we say? We borrowed $320. We put a 20% down payment. So at the end, we're paying almost $583,000 for that home. Now, most people say, well, why would you do that? Well, this is why you would do it. One is, obviously, you're hoping that a home goes up in value, but with each payment that you make, you're going to build what's called equity. So if we look here at the top, let me just look at the payments. Our payments came out to $1,621 a month. So we're going to pay that 360 times. So if you take 360 and times it by the $1,621.39, that's how you get the 583. So when we look at that that dollar amount of $1,600, I'm just going to refer to it as $1,600. Look how much goes towards interest on the loan. You're only knocking that principal payment down by $421. So the new balance comes out to $319,000. So you only knocked it down by $421 on the first payment. And as we look, we're paying mostly interest up front. As we go down in the loan, you notice that the principal balance is going down. And how do we calculate the principal balance? Is basically we take the balance and we deduct the principal payment for that month. So this month is $457.56. That goes towards principal. This goes towards interest. So we just take it off the principal rate. How do we get this interest? We do principal times rate times time. So principal times 0.045 times 1 over 12. That's how we get this interest payment. And then we take our monthly payment and we minus this interest payment, and that's how we get the principal. Very basic formula. You learned it in third grade. Principal times rate times time. But what you should really have an appreciation of as we go on in time, look at this, guys. Look at the end of the loan. almost all the payment is going towards the principal on the loan. In the end, we're paying very, 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 very little interest here in the last year. I'm going to change it real quick because this is by month. I'm going to just put it by year here real quick. I'm going to put show by year, and I just want you to get a feeling of this, to look at it from an annual basis. So in the last year, we're only paying $466 in interest. Second last year is $1,300. 2,000. The reason why this is so small is because I did partial years here. But if you can look, you're only paying a couple $1,000s, a few $1,000s a year in interest at the end of that loan. And when you think about what a dollar is going to be worth 30 years from today, is it going to be worth the same as it is today? Absolutely not. It's only going to get weaker, and it's only going to inflate. So this is very, very small dollar amounts into the future when you take into account inflation and the value of the dollar. So the problem is a lot of people say, well, you want to pay the house off quickly so you could avoid a lot of this interest. But here's the thing: when you send this principal payment in, the bank holds onto it for 0%. So whatever equity you have in the house, it's not earning any interest. So when I send a check in for $50,000 for my down payment, they're going to hold on to that $50,000. When I go to sell the house, I get that $50,000 back. There's no return on that equity. There is zero return on equity. Think about that for a second. So what you want to do every so often, if you're going to stay in a house long term, is you're going to want to what's called reposition the equity. And when you reposition the equity, I have a little spreadsheet here that kind of shows this. Let's say after 10 years you pull out $100,000, you get a loan, you take out $100,000 out of your home, and you can put an investment that earns 6%, and they're going to charge you 4%, and the tax bracket's 20%. So here's the cost. It's going to cost you $4,000 at 4%. So on $100,000, you're going to pay $4,000 for interest. However, remember I said before, interest on a mortgage you get to deduct from your income. So you're going to get an $800 break on your income tax. That's where I'm getting the 20% from. You invested $100,000, you're earning 6%, so at the end of the first year you're going to have $106,000. Now next year, the balance you're going to be working off of, you're going to add this 800 into the 106, so now you have 106,800 invested. There's your interest earned. So that's how you get the 113. You add that to the 106. 106 plus 6,408 gives you this. Now I want to show you something. If you reposition at $100,000 for, let's say, the next 30 years, at the end of 30 years you're going to have $636,000 given you're going to get 6% return. It's going to cost you 4%. If you let the $100,000 sit in the house for 30 years, at the end of 30 years you're going to have $100,000. I just taught you a very, very, very basic way on how to put at least $500,000 in your pocket, and that's repositioning equity. However, here's the thing: you cannot reposition equity into assets that go down in value. So what people use equity for is they use it to buy boats, they use it to buy cars, they use it to purchase assets that go down in value. Do not do that. Use that equity and invest in assets that go up in value, and that's where your financial literacy will come into play here. If you go to some websites, they will say do not do this. The reason why you should not do this is because most people aren't educated on how to manage assets that go up in value. They will take money as soon as they get it, and they will spend it. They will either burn it, just spend it on something, new clothing, new whatever, or they'll purchase assets that go down in value. And that has to do kind of with that first video. Let's change our rates around. Let's say we reposition 200. Let's say we could pull 200 out. Let's bump that up. The stock market average 30-year periods usually around 9%. I'll put in 8. Let's say interest rates are a little bit higher. Let's choose 5%. So I take that $200,000 out of my home. I refinance my home, and I reposition that $200,000 into 8%. It costs me 5% for that loan. At the end of 30 years, I'm going to have $2.2 million. That's time value of money. My people out here that have never taken a business class, I know a lot of you are taking pre-calc, so you have studied time value of money. Very, very important concept. I am not a math wizard by any means. I leave that to my wife, but when it comes to the math, I go up to pre-calc. not pre-calc, excuse me, trigonometry is my highest math class I've ever taken. I have a master's in business, and I survived just okay. But really the most important concept when it comes to looking at money is time value money, and that's kind of what this table is showing you the effect of what happens when you reposition money over time. All right, so if you could go buy something like, this is kind of funny, our car, we had some issues with it. It was too small for the kids, our second vehicle. I just sold the car, and a lot of people say, well, why don't you trade the car in? Well, if I trade the car in, I lose that cash, that capital. Now I can't invest that cash. I tie it up into the car. So we just bought another car. We got 0% financing for 60 months. Instead of taking the proceeds from that other car and wrapping it in and having a lower monthly payment, which most people will do because that's what they think is right, I'm going to take that car that I sold, take the money from the proceeds of the sale, and reposition it. So let's say I could take, I sold the car for $12,000. Let's say if I could get, let's say a 7% return. The cost of the money is 0 because it's my money, and tax rate is going to be, I can't really take that money out. But if I reposition that money at, let's say, 7% over the next 5 years, which would be 60 months, at the end I'm going to have $16,830 at 7% return. Basically, by taking that $12,000 and putting it into the into the new car, I would have saved myself $800. So you tell me what's better, $4,800 or $800? Now some of you are saying, well, Navickas, how are you going to get 7% return? Well, that's where your study of investments and stuff like that come into play. So you need to study how investments work. You need to find investments that are right. Over the last 3 years, in a pretty bad beat-up market, I usually get anywhere from 7 to 10%. I've kind of received. I don't get too greedy. A lot of people get too greedy, and that's when they lose big. So you kind of have to study that, but you'll study that when you start studying finance and how money works. So here's a short example how you could use tables in Excel to your benefit. Watch this though. Let's say your return is 4% and the cost of the money is 6%. You reposition $100,000. Now, non-business persons say, wait, you're only getting 4% return, but it's going to cost you 6%? Don't do that. Well, watch, guys. Watch what happens here. Watch what's going to happen to the money. Now, yeah, in the beginning, I'm going to be getting burned here because look, I'm still below at 12,000. But in year 3, I'm still below because my borrowed cost is 18,000. My balance is over 15,000 I've made. And see, for a while, I'm kind of below, but eventually, at year 10, I surpass. I'm at 161. I've paid 60 for that use of money. And then over time, and you might be asking, well, why does that happen? Well, that's compounding interest. It's earning interest off of interest you've earned. And even if you borrow money and you get a lower rate, if you hold it long enough, it'll eventually pass the amount. And that's something to really, really kind of think about there. Because my naysayers out, well, what happens if, well, if you hold the investment long enough, it will be okay. All right, so here's the assignment. You watch these 2 videos. I want a 1-page reflection on what I've discussed. Your thoughts. Is this something you would consider, or would you be a little more conservative? Just kind of think about that a little bit, and then shoot me that email in the in one of the assignments there. I'm going to use this as a form grade, so this will go into your form grade, but it's going to be emailed to me. Okay, thanks.